Okay, good evening, everybody. We are recording this session. I am going to try and not date things as a result, so we can use this over again maybe in the future. But um, thank you so much for jumping in. This is the 22nd annual TechBridge Business Plan Competition Help Session for the financial model. And so I was just counting before. We have 16 plus one, so we have 17 people on the call so far. Um, and so that's a really big group. And so what I want to do tonight is I want to help all of those who are here to actually try and decide if you want to be in the business plan competition to see what this deliverable is all about. And I want to be able to help mentors who are here. And got one or two more. So let me just let everybody in and we'll keep going. All right. So for those who just jumped in, Frank and Kyle, thank you for joining. All right. So my very first thing that I'd like to ask everybody to do is make sure you have the ability to write things down on a notepad or a scratch pad or a phone, because we're going to start with our hands off the computer, guys. So let's step back for a second. So the business plan competition has 4 deliverables, and you can find all 4 of those deliverables at techbridgepa.org. Okay. Now there are 4 deliverables, and I'm not sure that any of you guys have really sort of looked at them in depth or tried to figure out what's going on with them. But look, there's a reason for the 4 deliverables. And let's put that in context. Each of the 4 deliverables are going to help you tell your story. And they're going to help you tell your story in different ways to the judges, because the judges are trying to figure out, does this venture have legs? Does this have potential? Does this have excitement? And for the judges to be able to do that, they're going to assess you in different kinds through different kinds of lenses, right? And so one is going to be you're going to prepare some written content that they can absorb. Another is that you're going to give them a competitor analysis, which really requires you to look through a different lens. Another is that you're going to give them a financial model, which is data in a different form. It's just a different form of the art. It's a different form of the science. And you're going to give them data in the form of a presentation. So there is a method to the process. You're telling your story in different ways. And one of the ways that we're going to tell the story is through a financial model. So we've got a lot of different teams here. And the thing that I'm going to tell you about the financial model is, number one, it's a forecasting tool. And you might be able to break it. I hope you don't break it. But the purpose of the forecasting tool is to give you the ability to play and to come up with, how do I want to tell my story in numbers, right? So remember, I told you I'm looking for pad and paper. There are different groups here doing different things, and I'm going to try to accommodate everybody tonight. But in order to do that, I need you guys to do some self-reflection, because how you use this model depends on a few things. So let's start. Number one, what kind of venture are you today on January 30th at 6 o'clock at night? What do I mean by that? Are you an idea stage venture that's trying to decide if you want to be in this competition, and you're trying to figure out if I can commercialize my idea? And commercialization is a goal, guys. Commercialization means that you can have sustainability and profitability. There's lots of ideas. There are not lots of commercial businesses. A commercial business is something that we can sustain and that we can profit from. When you profit, that means that you can put money back into the company to grow, or you can pay yourself for the really hard work, right? So some of you are at the idea stage. It's a perfectly okay place to be. Some of you on this call actually are incorporated and have done a tax return. All right. All that means is that you're a little bit further down the road when it comes to your financial reporting. It means that you might actually already have some awareness of financial models and revenues and expenses. But the very first place that you guys need to ask yourselves the question, am I an idea early stage company, or am I an incorporated established company? Because there's different paths. Okay. There's no right answers. There's no wrong answers. It just matters in terms of where you're at. The second question that I want to ask you is, let's reflect. Let's do some self-awareness. Here's my question to you guys. You do not have to shout it out, but here's the question. How experienced are you with hands-on accounting? Write it down. There is no right or wrong answer. It will tell you something, though, because if you're really serious about starting a business, you're going to need to eventually be good at understanding accounting. You do not have to understand debits and credits. You do have to understand what income statements and balance sheets say. If you're going to run a business, eventually you're going to need to understand those things. You can't avoid it. You can start a business, but eventually you're going to need to be able to tell people how your business is doing in terms of revenues and expenses. You're going to need to do it for tax returns. You're going to need to do it for investment, whether it's banks or loans. You're going to need to do it, be able to figure out if you can pay your bills. Now, the extension to that is, if you are not good at hands-on accounting, what are you going to do about it? You can probably get through this model because this is a forecasting model. You can't break it. You can just play with it till it tells the story that you want. But when you have a business, who is going to be responsible in your world for the numbers? This is something that's you've got to decide. You need to understand what the numbers say. Who's going to be responsible for actually producing those numbers, whether it's in your checkbook or in your accounting software or for your financial reporting, whatever that is, who's going to do that? And this is a really important question, because I'm going to encourage you as individuals who are pursuing commercialization, taking your idea and moving it to a real business, that you should really think about who can help you do this. It can be you, but as I've said to many of you on this call already, there's only 25 hours in a day. No, there really aren't. Nobody can really do 25 hours in a day. You can try, but you can't do it. You cannot do it. It's physically impossible. You might be a really good accountant, and that's where you want to spend your time. That's okay. But if you're spending your time in accounting, you're probably not spending your time in product development, or you're not spending your time in marketing, or you're not spending your time in customer service. These are all about choices, and you can be a solopreneur. And I just had this conversation today with one of you who's on the call. Um, but the key is the judges are going to be looking to how can you grow your business and how can you expand your pie, right? You can do all this by yourself. There's lots of people who are solopreneurs who are very successful. The key is, how do you grow your business? And so one of the things that we've talked about is that we're going to be very transparent with those deliverables about how the scores get built and how teams win with the rubrics. And we're going to give you guys feedback on that. And I'm really thrilled that we're going to have that degree of transparency, because I think that's really professional. But one of the rubrics that you're going to see is, who's your team? So right now, I'm going to tell you guys, you jumped into this call right tonight. One of the things that you're going to learn compared to anybody else who's not here so far is team is a consideration in the scoring for a business plan. Now, it's not the quantity of the team, it's the quality of the team. It's not that you have 48 years of experience. It's that your CTO used to work for Intel or something. I don't know. But the key to this whole thing is we're talking about the financial model tonight, but the question that I'm going to ask each one of you is, who's going to help build the financial model? Is it you, or is it you plus someone else? And I'm going to encourage you to really think about, how do I find other people who can help me that are good with numbers? Because it will make this particular deliverable easier to do and more meaningful for you as you build this idea into a business. If you don't know anybody that um, is good with numbers, we have mentors on this call tonight that have students that are in accounting programs. We have students who are in accounting programs on this call tonight. This is a great way for students to help develop their resume. This is a great way for accounting students to figure out if they really want to be in accounting. This is a great way for you to expand your team, either through partners or trusted voices or students. How are you going to share to grow your company? The judges are going to be evaluating you on this. So you might as well think about how it is you want to do that. Okay. So if you're not good at hands-on accounting, how can you find someone that is? Because you'll learn from them. And I will help you find those resources if you don't have them already. We have them at the help sessions. We have them in our schools. We have them in the community. Don't be afraid to ask for help when it comes to working on these financial models. This is a forecasting tool. Okay. So the idea here is we're going to give you the tools and the resources to play. So team is a factor. Finally, for those of you who are just getting started, there are two different kinds of models. There's a cash-based accounting model, and there's an accrual-based accounting model. If you don't know the difference, you need to talk to somebody and ask them which one is best for you. But I will tell you, if you don't know the difference, start with cash, because the cash model is the equivalent of a checkbook. The accrual model, and I should ask my friend Glenn on what the definition of accrual-based accounting is, but an accrual-based model is effectively trying to take all of your complex stuff and make it so that it tells the story on a month-by-month basis. The purpose of accrual accounting is to take out variability, right? For purchases of inventory and assumptions as it relates to receivables and payables and cyclicality and all that good stuff. So cash accounting is for your basic fundamental approach to business. Accrual accounting is when you want to get a little bit more sophisticated and tell a story about how your business operates, not what your business is doing. Okay. So for those of you who are building products, who are making stuff that has inventory and has work in process, has lots of raw materials, you're probably a better candidate for accrual. But most of you on this call can probably be cash accounting. Okay. But that's a good conversation for somebody who really understands this stuff. And you know what? Part of the business plan competition is about learning and growing and connecting. So this is a really good conversation. Hey, I don't know the first thing about accounting. Should I be cash-based or accrual-based? What's the difference? You might learn something out, okay? But for tonight, I'm going to work with you guys on the cash model, because most of you on this call are probably cash-based businesses. If you're not, and you're not sure, call me after the call. We'll figure it out, and we'll just keep moving forward, okay? So I'm going to share my screen. Does anybody have any questions before we get moving forward? If you have a question, raise your hand so I can see it. Okay, we're going to keep going. If at any point you have a question, just raise your hand, get my attention, okay? First things first. Okay. Stop doing that for a second. Okay, question to everybody. Has everybody gone out to techbridgepa.org and found the competition deliverables?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to go out. I went out to that page and I grabbed the cash accounting spreadsheet and I downloaded it and I was playing with it. Okay. So here's the spreadsheet, the first tab for the cash basis. Can everybody see that? Or no, I haven't shared it yet. I haven't shared it yet. Hold on. Sorry. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, great. All right. So I am very proud of this model. This is a tool. And it was built by students as interns at King's College. They did this a couple years ago and we keep iterating it. We're going to keep improving it. But this is a tool that tries to help people that aren't really super professional at accounting build financial statements called income statements and balance sheets, because you put the data in and you keep massaging it and it will tell you a story. And we're going to work on that tonight. Okay. But you can't break this. Download it and play with it. If you want to know what terms mean, terms are tab 1. If you want to understand account breakdown, that's number 2. You don't really care. Trust me. Okay. Most important. Typically, how many on this call read instructions? Probably 1 out of 10. We're going to start with instructions. Okay. Assumptions that you guys need to know. We don't do everything. We don't do it perfectly, but we do it good enough. 1, we are not worried about your payroll, sales, or use of taxes. Okay. If you want to factor them in, factor them in. We'll show you how. 2, this particular model assumes all expenses are cash. Think of this like your checkbook, right? The only way this model works is if you put it in, right? You recognize revenue when you get a check. You recognize expenses when you write a check, okay? I'll talk about prior data next. We'll talk about products next. We'll assume that all income goes to retained earnings. And the model assumes that if you're talking about interest rates, it's 5%, which is probably low, but it's okay. Those are just givens. So just hang with me. This thing looks scary. If you just start playing with it and understanding the context, it's not as bad as you think. Okay, so I started playing just to see if I could break this system. I want to show you guys some things that you need to think about. Remember when we talked in the beginning, where are you? Okay, first things first, everybody needs a name. You guys can do that. I put that in. Okay. One of the first things that you're going to need to do for purposes of this model is you're going to need to decide what kinds of revenue does your company generate. And so I started playing with this to see if I could find a kind of revenue that we couldn't put in the system. And guess what? The problem is not that we can't put them in. The problem is that you might have too many. And so if you have too many, the thing that you need to do is figure out what your top ones are and go with that. But for purposes of this conversation, I picked widgets, subscriptions, licenses, support contracts, commissions, and grants and awards. I tried to be as diverse as I could to see if it would work. Does anybody have a revenue type that I didn't call out already? In thinking about your businesses, do you have any sort of revenue type that doesn't match one of those descriptions? If so, shout it out and tell the group, because we're going to figure out how to do it together.
Commission.
Commission I got down there. We're going to talk about commissions. Anybody else?
Yeah, so kind of like Uber. So I would be getting income
that would be kind of like a commission. So if I can't figure out how to classify it, I guess I would classify it as a commission, but it's really not technically a commission. It's kind of like a flat, or it's a percentage fee based on sales.
Okay, so percentage fee based on sales. So you can call, you have the chance. That was Frank who asked that question, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
So Frank, one of your top scenarios needs to be percentage of sales. You're gonna need to play with the model to figure out how to do that. Like, you
Got
don't
it.
massage it in, but the key is figure out the buckets, guys. That's the first piece. And what are your most important buckets? Because your most important bucket you need to figure out how to do first, right? If if you only have like $1,000 in grants and awards and you don't know where to put it because you ran out, you don't care. Trust me. Okay. All right. So, couple of things. I just started here. Does anybody have any questions about thinking about what kind of revenues they have so far?
Just a question on the model. If we don't have products, do we leave the default product 1, 2, 3 or blank them out?
Just don't put any data in them.
Just delete what's in there. Okay.
No, don't put any entries in.
Well, it has by default product 1, product 2, product 3.
Yeah, just don't fill it in.
Just leave it. Okay. Thanks.
So you're either gonna have a product or service, right, Frank?
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't have any products, but I didn't know if those fields have to
Well,
be filled in or.
remember, we got to figure out that what you think is a service might be better as a product label
Right.
to get it to work. That's all.
Got it.
Right. But I
Frank,
guess
I thought the same thing. I'm in the same boat.
Thank
so
you.
so the idea here is figure out what your revenue sources are, and then where do they fit best in the model. That's a big piece before you get started, right? Okay.
I have a quick question too as well.
Sure.
So if we're selling a product, so like mine's going to be in an app store, so I'm going to have sales that go in USD, and then I'm going to have sales that happen in just various currencies internationally. Should I put those in as two products because one's going to be an average based on exchange and one's going to be the actual USD amount?
That is an excellent question. Thank you, Paul. So this model does not really handle foreign currency. So Paul, what you would do is jury rig it. Just say, okay, the equivalent US is X, and just maybe call that a different product depending on how many you have. Or, and I'll show you guys the secret to this when we get to it. Just sort of put it in your spreadsheet and massage it into the model. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Okay. So Paul, that was a really great question. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Next one. So some of you are just getting started, and 2024 is going to be your base year, right? Some of you have incorporated and you have prior period data. Okay. So here's how this works. If you didn't start your business in 2023, you don't have any net income. Everybody's year one should be 2024. Does that make sense? Every single person in the competition should make year one this year. Nobody should do that any other way. But some of you might need to figure out what that means for prior period activity. If that's the case, the easiest thing I'll say to you is call me, we'll figure it out. But it's pretty straightforward. So if you were operating in 2023, put your data in the system. You have full data for 2023, 2024 is a forecast. If you were operating in 2022 or 2021 or 2020, then what you have to do is you just plug down here the net income for all that goodness, right? So I plugged that prior to 2023, DW Enterprises lost $50,000. Oh boy. But it's just the sum of your net income, because what you're really doing is getting your model caught up, right? So you're in one of two places. I'm just getting started in 2024. That's really easy. Go forward. If I've started before 2024, put your 2023 data in and we adjust for prior years before that. The quick way to do that is if this is a question, call me. It's not as hard as it sounds. Because what we do is we plug that number down here to get you to a baseline in 2024. Okay? Anybody got any questions?
So it says with prior years, enter actual data if applicable. Do you just put 2023, or like if I started in 2020, do I put 2020 through 2023?
What we're gonna do for you on that question, because you're not the only one, so thank you, Parkston. You're going to put 2023 actual in 2023. And then what you're gonna do is we're gonna take all your prior years and stuff them in this box right here. Okay?
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Tricia, the same thing for you.
Okay, so it's investment. And then you kind of
It's just your net income
give a credit to just the income, not investment.
so far.
Okay.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So look, if you guys have prior year data, talk to me. We'll get you through it. Okay? Okay. I'm going to go to the next tab. Okay. The next tab has to do with product and service input. Oh, let's see what the other tabs are just for fun. Okay, here's some other inputs, which is the other side of revenue. And then the purple are sort of the stuff that happens on the other side. So purple is where you go look to see what your work is producing. What's interesting about the purple is I will tell you guys, the first thing that judges do when they're scoring you guys, they go here. Now, I'll play with this and I'll make the model look kind of different as we go through this. If you guys are showing a hockey stick, does everybody know what that means? Where you're sort of going like this and then you go up like this right away. That's the first thing that judges look for. Don't do that. I'm going to tell you right now, if you start building models that say, Don, I'm killing it in year 2, when you didn't do jack in year 1, nobody's going to believe you. That's just the way it is. You might be telling the truth and you're going to have to defend that, but I wouldn't put it in there like that because it's not usually true. So don't be overly rosy in your estimates. I'm going to tell you right now, in your first year, if you lose money, most judges expect that. I expect that. You need to start your business with investment and expenses to get to revenue. You might be able to get it to wash through in the first year, but you're not going to start the first year and make bank. You're the unicorn if you do. So don't be the unicorn unless you really are. Build a model that tells a story. If you don't have any revenue in 2024, don't tell the judges you're going to be doing $1 million in 2025. Even if you think you're gonna, because most judges won't believe you. Unless you're that person who just says, Don, I'm doing it. Judges, I'm doing it. You can believe me or not, I'm generating $1 million in year 2 when I've never done this before. Okay. Sell it. Maybe you can. Okay. We did our company and I entered this data. And here's what I want to show you guys. Notice that the labels show up. So Frank was asking this question before. I'm going to go back to the company input and I'm going to delete widgets. And I'm going to go to the product and service input. Oh, gee, there's nothing there, Frank, right? So you don't have to fill these out.
That's exactly what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I am going to go back and put widgets in just for giggles because I started this. Okay. I have widgets and subscriptions, and I have licenses in the product section. And I kept going and I said, I got support contracts and commissions and grants and awards down in service because I just tried to see how many I could do. Here's what I'm going to tell you guys. You probably don't have more than 3 or 4. I could honestly understand that you got to have at least 1, right? You might have 2. I'm going to suggest you probably have 3 if the third one is grants and awards, right? Because I think that's a good catch-all, grants and awards, and you can jury rig that one in. But let's talk about widgets. Widgets are for those of you who are making products. We're making things, okay? Not software. We're going to play that differently. This is if you're making things. So in order to figure this out, I'm going to show you the opposite, the expense side. So I have to do expenses, but sorry, I didn't crush this through. I'm sorry, I'm going to confuse you guys here for a second. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to flip to the expense side for one quick second, just so that you guys understand how to do this. All right. On the expense side, they ask you for a series of different types of expenses. What I'm going to say to you is these are all annual numbers. And so what I did in this model is I built a spreadsheet. And this is how I'm going to encourage all of you guys to go forward. I can share this exact spreadsheet with you, but it's not really very hard to make. It's 12 months plus the columns in the spreadsheet. It works the same way on the product side. We could build this one together if you want. But the key is what goes in the model that was built here is annual data. Okay. So the key is go out and figure out your annual data in a spreadsheet, because this is where you can make all your game changes around, you know what, I'm not going to sell any product in the first quarter. I'm going to sell 10 a month in the second quarter. I'm going to sell 20 a month in the third quarter. I'm going to sell 50 a month in the fourth quarter, or I'm not going to sell any in the first 6 months. You can plug and chug. And then there's this total column on the side. Sorry, I don't know if you guys can see that, but the total column is the data that you put into the system, right? So build your data in spreadsheets and then transfer it into the model, because the model cares about annual numbers, right? So when the model asks you, how many units of product one do you expect to sell? That's how many do you expect to sell? And I did 20. I expect to sell on average, that spreadsheet told me I'm going to sell 100 widgets a month. So I'm going to do 1,200 widgets in 2024. Oh, gee, that's the same as I did last year. How much will you charge for each unit? Well, you know what? Prices went up. My widgets are now $15 instead of last year's 10. Oh, there's my revenue number that's going to pop up, okay? Anybody have a question so far on here? Just some simple math. Let me show you how that simple math translates real quick on the income statement. There, that 18,000 just popped. Did you guys see that? So you throw a number in here, it calculates it, it moves it over here. And oh, by the way, if I kept going, it moves it over here, and it moves it over here, and it moves it over here. So it keeps getting iterative. So the profitability, the revenue just went up, is going to go up, right? So play and ultimately it tells a story. But you got to build the pieces to the puzzle to make the puzzle story come to life. So anyways, if you have widgets, here's the deal. How many are you going to do in the year? How much are you charging for your widgets? That's your revenue for that one. Here's the simple question. If you're building a widget, how much does the raw material cost for the widget? Oh, Don, I need metal, and I need fasteners, and I need nails, and I need wood. Put it in your spreadsheet, figure it out for what it would take to do the 1,200, and that's the number that goes in there, right? So calculate it on a monthly basis and put it in your spreadsheet on an annual basis. Same thing for labor costs. Here's a really important thing that you need to know. If you are the person who's doing everything, put zero labor and capture that labor down the road on the expense side. If you have dedicated widget makers, this is where you would put their cost and you figure it out. For almost 100% of you, you guys can fudge this and not even worry about these costs. You can put them somewhere else. But if you are truly making widgets and you have people on board doing widget making, then you probably need to calculate how much time does it make to cost, how much time does it take to do a widget? Well, they do 8 an hour. They work X hours. They make X per week. You know, you do the math, right? And that's why I said before, do you have anybody that understands how to do accounting? Because it really isn't that hard for people who have done this before. Now, look, here's what I did for subscriptions, right? So for subscriptions, I said, and sorry, I did this in 2023. That's my mistake. But let's say we're going to do 1,000. Well, we're going to do 100 subscriptions a month. So that's 1,200 a year. Okay, what are you going to charge for each subscription? I don't know. I said $5 a month. That's $60 a year, right? Okay, let's keep that just for fun. You guys can play. We'll go back. Oh, look, there's 72,000. 72,000 and 18,000. If I did this right, what number is going to pop up on my income statement, guys? 72 plus 18, right?
90.
Right. Let's go see if that happened. 90 showed up. Okay. That's the same thing that's going to happen down here too. Okay. So we play until we get this to tell the story, and then it rolls up into your income statement and you right. So the key is this is where you do the work. The results get shown on the other page. Okay. So I did subscriptions. Pretty straightforward, because guess what? In my subscriptions, I'm going to say that there were no material costs and there were no labor costs, because I'm going to capture that somewhere else when I have employees. And I'm just going to fully load that in my expense line because I don't want to worry about figuring it out. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. The more sophisticated you are, the more that Jada understands accounting. She can help Jamie put these pieces in the puzzle, right? There's always ways to work it around.
Don, I have a question, Don. This is Jamie.
Yep.
What if I don't have it nailed down yet how I'm going to price my product? So if I don't have a pricing model yet, what should I do?
You start by playing, Jamie.
Just play around with it? Okay.
One of the things is that your price is ultimately going to be determined by the market. That's what Jerry Listman said at the Youth Entrepreneurship Conference,
Yep.
right? Right. You've still got to figure out what the market's willing to bear.
Okay.
But if you do this right, you can figure out what your expenses are to do this stuff. And that'll tell you how many of your widgets or subscriptions or licenses you got to sell to break even.
Okay.
The market's ultimately going to tell you your price for your stuff, guys. But you can figure out what it is you need to do and whether or not you can make this idea into a commercializable business based on your expenses. And what I will tell you guys, for those of you who are just starting out, it's so much easier to do your expenses first because expenses are things you can guess at. Revenues are going to be things that you have to really guess at. But you can sort of see what your revenues need to be to tell your story based on your real costs that you think you're going to incur. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Expenses are reality. Revenues are things you got to go earn. Figure out what your revenues need to be based on your expenses. It's a little backwards, but it's a forecasting tool. So Jamie, like you got all those expenses. Holy samoli. Sorry about that. Holy mackerel. I got to go sell how many of those things at what price? What are you, nuts? Right? Okay. Let's go down and try another one. I came down here and now I had more than 3 and I kept going. So here's some support contracts. And I said, well, a support contract is a chargeable opportunity. So these are billable hours, guys. If any of you guys are doing consulting, this is your billable hour place. Well, how many billable hours? 10. Over the year, that's all you're going to do? 10. I didn't get to do any until December. 10 at $125 an hour, $1,200. How much are you paying that person? 45. I could just as easily say 0 and capture that number somewhere else in the back, and I'll show you that. But there's your 450. Okay, you guys asked me about commissions. I came down here and I said, all right, I'm gonna try and do commissions as a service. Guess what? I started looking at this. You guys have commission pay as a percentage, whatever, percentage-based revenue. You gotta make it a product. You can't make it a service. It doesn't work with this model. There's a hint. So Frank, you've got to make one of your products percentage revenue, commissions, whatever you label it. It's got to be a product, can't be a service.
So it couldn't, because yeah, so when you got here, that was the question. So you couldn't just put one chargeable hour times $10,000, right? That's why it has to go
Oh,
up at the end.
you could. It'll show it up there, but that's the massage the model piece, right?
So there's no right or wrong though. Like, so if you pick one or the other, the judges aren't going to say this is stupid because you put 1 hour at $10,000.
No,
But that's
actually, the judges might ask you that because the judges will look at your product and service assumptions.
Right.
They'll look. They might ask you. So if you jury rig the model, you better be prepared to tell people what you did.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So it's about demonstrating. Remember, I told you guys, this is about storytelling. The numbers tell a story. You built the numbers. You need to tell the judges if there's some reason that what they see doesn't make sense. And so I'll come back to that because I'll bring that back to at the end. But there's a place where you can tell your story because in the executive summary, there is a place where I say, listen, give a high level summary of your financial model. That's where you put your sort of, I'll call them exclusions or special case things. Hey, in my model, I have commissions, and you'll see that in the service section. Whatever, okay? And so I tried to do grants and awards down here. I probably could jam it. You know what I mean? The key is if I think I have $10,000, how do I get it in the system? I can get it in the system here by saying 100 hours times 10, right? And you just force it. There's $1,000 for grants and awards, right? If you're getting 10,000, you could put 1,000 here. Some of you guys are in Texcelerator. You want to show that you got revenue from Texcelerator. Here's the way to do it would be an example.
1,000, so it's 10,000 total.
Well, here, make it work, right? There, right?
Okay.
There's an example for all of you who are in Texcelerator that are getting reimbursable expenses. There's a way to put grants and awards in, okay?
The mix of the numbers doesn't matter as long as it equals 10,000, which would be, the amount that would come through. So how you get there, what you put in each of those fields doesn't really matter. Just get it.
Right, because look, here's where it shows up. It shows up in one line in sales revenue. Right. So the question is, can you defend this story over time, right? Okay. I want to take a breath for a second. Who's got questions? Anybody?
Don, does that go into 24 because we didn't get the funds, or does that go to 23 because we completed it in 23?
It'd be 24 because it's when you earn it. So
that's what I thought. When it hits your account is when it should be recorded, right? Okay.
You're doing cash basis. Yes, yep. Anybody who's in Texcelerator that gets the max amount should put in $10,000 as grant revenue. Okay. Anybody else? If your hair hurts right now, it's 6:45. You are not alone. If you've never done this before, the number one thing that you need to take away is I need to find a trusted voice to help me with this. We can get you through if you want to do it by yourself. But remember, the business plan competition wants to know about how are you going to grow the pie, not how are you going to survive. If you're going to be responsible for sales and marketing and accounting and customer service and new product development, that's a tough pill to swallow in terms of are you really going to be successful? And frankly, are you really going to be successful if you're only doing this by yourself? Entrepreneurship's lonely by yourself. Get some help. One of the things that successful entrepreneurs do is they ask for help. Okay? Let's do other. Go ahead. Who had a question?
John George. So in the business model where I hold money for people, say escrow, and I earn interest on that money,
Right?
would that be a product?
Yes.
And I'd fudge that in like you just demonstrated.
Because you can figure out how much interest you're forecasting to make on a monthly basis. It's a product.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. This gets easier now, guys. This is the part I should have done this first, but I started out in the product side because it's top down. We're going to do assets, liability, equities, and expenses. One of the things that you guys want to know is the judges want to understand how you're going to fund your startup. If you think about it, you can't make something out of nothing. You can put 100% sweat equity in. That's a model. But is that what you're really doing? Or are you loaning funds in? Or you have common stock because you need cash to be able to pay for the light bill, or you need to buy marketing materials, or you need to have hosting expenses, or you need to pay a contractor. Where's that initial cash coming from, guys? That's a really important question for the early stage entrepreneur. I either lent it in, or I borrowed it, which is, by the way, the same thing, or I have equity in the form of common equity. Okay. So you need to think about, did you self-fund this and you put money in? Did somebody else give you money? Did somebody else invest money? The judges want to understand what that assumption is. And that's a reality question. How are you going to get started? And if you don't know the answer, come talk to me. Or talk to your colleague that you're recruiting, or your intern, or your college student, because they'll have ideas too, right? This is just a different form of storytelling. It's storytelling with numbers. And you're going
How
to tell.
far back, sorry, John, how far back does that go? Say we paid for a website 2 years ago. How far back do we go on here?
Well, if we think about what we talked about in the beginning, Tricia, you have a company that was in operation prior to 2023, right?
Yes.
So we fit the 2023 numbers in just like they're supposed to.
Okay.
And then anything prior to 2023, we take the net income for all those other years, we plug it in that first box on the first page. And I can show you how to do that.
And then the expenses come on the back end here?
Well, no, what happens is, but that plug catches you up to last year.
Okay, I see what you're doing then. So it's
So
expected.
we plug
All right.
everything prior to 2023 in that one box.
A number.
We
Okay.
put 2023 in, and then we start forecasting 2024.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right. So here's some interesting questions for you guys. I'm not sure you guys have a lot of assets, but you might have some. You might have equipment. You might have a building. You might have a company car. Like, I don't know, like it's possible. Do you have assets that you put in the into the business? Most people don't have a lot of assets. This is not a really big number for early stage companies, particularly ones who are starting the process in 2024. Liabilities are pretty straightforward, guys. Did you borrow money? If so, what was the interest you paid? If so, did you pay it back? If not, it's all going to be the same number at the bottom. Same thing from other, like this is really straightforward once you start to sort of peel the onion, right? And so, Jamie, you've got Jada on the call, right?
Jada dropped at 6:30, so I'm going to send her the recording and all my notes here.
Okay. Well, Jada would understand this stuff.
Mhm.
You might not, you might not, but Jada will. Okay.
I mean, I got A's in my last 2 accounting classes, but this is still foreign to me.
I think this whole group is happy that you got A's. Okay. So again, we're now on the expense model side. Here's what I'm going to tell you guys. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 kinds of expense categories. Guess what? They might not be all of the 8 categories that you need for your business. Let's talk about that. I'm going to go over to the spreadsheet for a second. So we got administrative, advertising, automobile, insurance, maintenance, miscellaneous, rent, and utilities. I took this straight from the model. If you guys want this spreadsheet, I'll send it to you, but I know you can build this. Let's talk about what these things mean. And then let's talk about what's not here. And if it's not here, it needs to end up in miscellaneous. Because I know there are some things missing, and you being on the call today, we'll talk about them to help you. Okay, administrative. That's where you put your salaries or your hourly wages for the staff that you have for your business. If you put 100% of your wages in administrative, you don't need to deal with any of that labor shit in the products. That might not be the perfect way to do the model, but it works. And so how sophisticated you want to get in your model is a function of how good are you with your accounting. You can get through this because it's a forecasting tool. Remember, you're telling a story. How do you want this story to be told? The better your model is, the more the judges will probably score you. That's just human nature. But the numbers tell the story. How you generate the numbers, some judges are a little picky about that. And it also shows you really know what you're doing, which is what the judges are trying to figure out, guys. Where are you on the spectrum of understanding whether or not you can do this? That's what they're judging. Okay. Because
So
they're all rooting for you. By being in this competition, they want you to be successful. There is not a single judge that wants to score this down for any reason. They want to see, how great can you guys be? But they are going to judge how ready are you. And this is one way for them to see how ready you are. Do you have somebody that really understands how to manipulate this spreadsheet?
So question to that regard, Don. So like a lot of these expenses I don't have or can incur in other ways. So it's not an error of omission. I literally don't have them.
Well,
So
let's go through this, Frank, because you have more than you think. You have, if you guys have, if you're paying for salaried employees or hourly employees, the first thing I would do is I would use row 2. If you're using contractors doesn't really fit in this model. I'd stuff it in miscellaneous. And you guys might end up with a really big miscellaneous number when we get done with this. You just have to explain it in your business plan. I put X% of miscellaneous towards contracting. I put Y towards, here's the other big one that's missing, professional services. Glenn, we got to fix the model. Professional services needs to be in this in the future. Professional services are your lawyers, your accountants, right? It could be your contractors. The issue is it's going to all end up in miscellaneous, guys, because there's no other category to fit.
So that's my point, though. Like a lot of those things I do have, and they'd all be miscellaneous. So that is where the summary, we would maybe break that out.
Exactly. That's where you tell your story. Because ultimately, it's about your income and your revenue. I mean, it's about your income and expense and what your net income is. And here, well, listen, I had to stuff everything in the miscellaneous category. In my business plan, if you stuff everything in the miscellaneous category, you better call that out in the business plan in the write-up section. It's okay. That's all you do. That's why you're on the call tonight. But you know what, Frank? Most people don't put insurance in. I will tell you guys, the judges look at insurance as a proxy for how much do you really understand your business? Well, why do they do that? I'll tell you why. Because there's product liability. If you guys are building products, you need product liability insurance. If you haven't talked to an insurance person, then you haven't done your homework on whether or not this is really a viable business. That's an indicator to the judges. So you got product liability, whether you have software or hardware or products, widgets. If you don't have anything in your insurance line, it means you didn't do your homework. That's a proxy. Tell you guys that right now. You also have insurance for general liability, directors and owners, rental. If your insurance line is zero, that's the first thing that judges are going to, that's the first thing I would look at as a judge, because it shows how sophisticated you are about understanding the risk of your business. It's one of the big mistakes entrepreneurs make. I've seen it over and over and over again. Everybody should have an insurance number in there based on somebody's conversation with somebody who's in the field of insurance.
Don, for the insurance line, maybe this isn't exactly what you're talking about, but like I work from home, but I have all my equipment that I'm using at home insured. Would you consider that an insurance expense?
Did you pay an insurance person for a policy for it?
Yes.
Well, then it's an insurance expense. So
Beautiful.
property and equipment, right?
Right.
Is directors and liability, product liability, they're all in categories of insurance. It's one of the red flags the judges look for is, have you guys figured out your risk that you're managing? Okay. The other big one is, where do my marketing expenses go? Your marketing expenses go in your advertising line. And everybody's going to have some form of marketing. Might not be big, but it's probably not zero. And where do my IT expenses go? Well, that one you can play with, right? Maybe maintenance, maybe advertising because it's hosting. Like, I don't, it doesn't matter.
John, would that come under professional services if we add that line?
We're not going to add professional services
You're
in
not
this.
gonna add it at all, okay.
Because you know what, I don't want to change the model because some people are already starting to work.
All right, so we'll keep it in miscellaneous,
That's where it goes.
okay.
Right.
Don, from our conversation earlier, if I have the Adobe suite, is that a maintenance?
I think you could throw it wherever you want, Paul. That's it's sort of a fit thing.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's software. So we don't have a software line in here. So I would put it in miscellaneous, or I'd put it in advertising
Okay, thank you.
because
Hey,
it's marketing.
Don, you could add footnotes too, I guess, to those. If you've got stuff thrown in miscellaneous, put a couple of asterisks and say includes items such as, in this way.
Yeah. The problem is we can't put it in the model. That's what we have to.
No, I'm not saying put it in the model. If there's a way to, on whatever presentation
Yes.
page, the model
Yeah.
shows up.
Yeah. So that's Glenn. That's a really good point. So look, for those of you who haven't looked at the executive summary template, I specifically call out, because I looked at it this weekend and said, you guys should write a 1-paragraph overview of what's going on in your financial model deliverable. That is the perfect place to call out. I put all this stuff in miscellaneous, and here's what makes up my miscellaneous category because the model doesn't support it. Here's what I put in advertising. Like that's a good way to tell the judges, I know what I'm doing. It gives you the detail to support the model.
Where would we include that summary, Don?
It's in the executive summary. It's called out as one of the line items. Do an overview of your financial model. In other words, the executive summary says, don't go more than 10 pages, guys. And it says there's 6 or 8 areas that they want you to answer. So it's almost like a page per, give or take. But one of the things you might want to do is spend the time to say, all right, here's my executive summary to my financial model. Here's my executive summary to the competitor analysis. It's the same thing. Summarize what your competitor analysis says in 1 paragraph, but you've got a 3-page opportunity to show them that you've looked through the lens of competitors and that you understand what the marketplace looks like relative to what you're doing. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go back. So here's where you can play to figure out your expenses. You're going to come up over here with a total. The total line goes back over here in this right here. So if I've got if I've got 5 employees and we're paying them $20,000 a year, including all their taxes and benefits, I would put $100,000 right here. Okay. How much did the business incur for marketing and advertising on an annual basis? I don't know, 10,000. Well, maybe 12,000. So, right. You guys can push this in. You can fill out, all right, I don't really have automobile expense, but probably everybody does. Insurance expense, got to talk to an insurance broker. How much is it? You know what? Probably $7,500 a year. I don't know. And then down here, miscellaneous, I've got accounting and I've got contractors and I've got lawyers. That's going to cost me 25,000 in the first year. Okay, let's see what happened from some of our entries. I go back over here. I come on down. You know, by the way, oh, sorry, you know what? I put it in 2023. This is a mistake that I have made a couple times now, guys. Learn from that. I keep putting it in the prior year. But this is the way you know, this is where you go back and forth and you figure it out. So this is 2023 because it should really be here. $2023 will be actuals because for those of you who are in business, it's whatever happened. And there's your expenses, right? So then you have income up top, you have expenses down below, you've got a loss this year, you've got a loss last year for whatever giggles. The balance sheet, we didn't put much in the way of any entries in there. The financial ratios will tell things to the judges. If you don't understand financial ratios, you probably want someone to explain what they mean because they might ask you a question about it. They typically don't ask questions about ratios, but the ratios tell them things in terms of your success. Let me fix this. We've got all those expenses. Let me go back and go, wow, I really need to fix my revenues to get to a break-even point. What do I need to do? Let's see, my other inputs are all right, I gotta get to 150 grand to show a profit. Let's figure out how we do that. I am going to sell a lot of widgets. I'm going to sell 200,000 widgets. That could be pieces of software, right? I'm going to charge, it's too many. Right, I got 300,000 that I've generated because I'm going to sell 2,000 a month. And my cost is, let's see what happens here. Oh, what do you know? I have a profit. But here's the problem, guys. We go back here, we start looking at, we did this. Can I really sell 24,000 widgets? Can I really sell 24,000 licenses? That all becomes your marketing plan, right? So all the pieces eventually fit together. What you do is you just iterate until you get to the way that you want this. But if I go over, I could really make this thing sing. But over here, we didn't do 25, but see this kind of trajectory here, guys? See this kind of number right here? It's kind of, the judges probably aren't really gonna like, you need to tell a really good story to see that be real. And so the key is, how about you get to the point where you can actually start to make this thing go positive, like the trend starts to tell the story. That's kind of what you want to get to with your financial model. So I'm going to stop sharing here. I went for over an hour. I'm going to step back for a second, and I'm going to just sort of let the group kind of tell me where you're at. How many of you have little to no accounting experience? Just raise your hands on the screen. Little to no accounting experience. Okay, a couple, right? Christian added his. So for those of you who have little to no accounting experience, the number one thing you need to do is find a good partner. Find a fellow student, find a friend, find a mentor, call and ask for somebody for help. We need to get you somebody that can actually help massage your story into the numbers, okay? How many of you have not incorporated your business yet? Show of hands. 2 that I see so far. 3. Okay. So you guys are almost in the same boat as those that don't know accounting because you probably haven't done this before. You're in the same boat. You need to help, you need to find somebody that can make the foreign language of accounting be something that can be translated that you understand, right? So thanks, Glenn. So look, this is like you need to learn Spanish, or you need to learn French, or you need to learn Hindu, or you need to learn Russian. If you've never done it before, it's new. You need to find somebody to teach you. It's the same thing. It's like learning software. You got to learn to code. Well, this is software with numbers, right? It's just a new skill, and there are those that have it. Okay. Who has questions that the group would benefit from? And then who has questions that you need to just stay on and ask me and I'll answer?
I think I have a question that would benefit the group. It's about labor expenses, basically. I mean, I'm only going to be paying contractors until the game's, very profitable, making a video game.
Right.
But there's also the thing of I'm paying them before the game's out. So do I just stick to putting the cost of a game programmer in miscellaneous expenses without putting it in the other tab that's products and service input, I think?
Yes. Yes, that's what I
yeah.
would do, Parkson. I would do that.
Okay.
Because they're contractors. So I would put
Yeah.
that, I mean, technically we might, thanks, Tricia. Technically we might go back and reconfigure that because you want to
Okay.
show sophistication in your model. We could
Right.
probably get there, Parkston, but to start, just to see how it works, yeah, put it in miscellaneous as a contractor.
Okay.
That's where you start.
Because I know last year I just did some weird math to like divide the amount that I made and I don't know, it was weird to put it in
Yeah.
there.
Right.
But yeah, okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So here's the deal. If you guys came tonight, I would welcome your feedback to me in an email about how this session was for you and what you got out of it, if anything, and was it worth your time? And you're not going to hurt my feelings if you're like, this was useless. Okay, well, tell me why. But for those of you who aren't sure if you want to even be in the business plan competition, thank you for coming tonight. The spirit of tonight was to say, you can do this. We can get you where you need to be. It can be a foreign language, but we know how to speak foreign languages. You just have to translate it into the things that are important to you, called products and services and expenses, right? Because this is just a different form of storytelling. In the business plan competition, we want you to do a written story. We want you to do a presentation story. We want you to do a competitor story. We want you to do a numbers story. It's different lenses that the judges get to see. How far along are you in translating this idea into a commercial venture? And if you are doing accrual accounting, knock yourselves out. And we will talk about that separately for anybody that wants to do that. But if you're doing accrual accounting, it means you understand what you're doing. Or someone else does, but you have to explain it. I'm going to stay on. I'm going to stop the recording and anything's fair game after that.